Hi, welcome to Diving into Deep Waters. I am your host, Erin Rolling, and we are going to get into Samson, which super excited, part 2. But before I get there, of course, I got to give a little lowdown, a little rundown what's happening in my life. And I just have to give a little shout out to my 2 older girls and also to the girl who helped us in the fitting room, because I don't know her name. I wish I would have gotten it, because I would love to write the company a letter and say, this girl is amazing and she should be a part of your company forever. Give her a raise. But if you're a mother or a grandmother or a sister or like a mother figure to someone, you know that when it comes time for dress shopping for a special event, especially like snow coming or homecoming, it's fun, it's exciting, it's, we have a good time, but it also, as much as the excitement that you have about it, you can have trepidation about it, you can have nightmares about it, you can feel yourself sweating as you walk into the dress store. And I can tell you, with all of my girls, I have prayed over every single dress, literally, because it's just no small feat. And I feel like, I was talking to my oldest daughter about this, I feel like when she was embarking on this part of her life in her teenage years, there was like half the store would be very modest and half the store was not so modest. So you kind of had more of more options than we do now. And I feel like now it's just so difficult. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack to find something that covers in all of the appropriate places. And I know that not every family is the same, but in our family, the top and the bottom are important. Those are the places that we cover and we make sure are covered well. And so it's just, and then you add on top of it that my daughter is 6'2". So for a little while we could find something, but we've really just come to a place where it's like, we don't even look anymore. We just look at long dresses and we say, can this be shortened? So sometimes you have to buy a much more expensive dress because it has to be shortened. But at this point, it's worth it because then we get to pick the length of the dress and it's so much easier. And so it was that time again, and we actually, she found a dress online that she liked, and so we ordered it, and it wasn't shipping. I was getting really nervous, and so I'm like messaging the company like, hey, can you check the shipping label or whatever? And they were basically like, we're going to have to give you your money back because it didn't ship, or we don't know where it is. And I'm like, great. And so, but thankfully we were in Grand Rapids, and there's obviously way more options in Grand Rapids than there is in our little town of Marlette. And so my daughter was like, I think we can find something. And so it was actually something that I've been waiting for it to happen, was for my older girls to be able to go shopping with Abby and just have like a sister time, just bonding time. We took Audrey with us. And so a little fun fact, we were in the dressing room. I have a gluten, like I'm allergic to gluten. It's not just something I choose not to eat, but Sunday night, my eyes were so swollen and I couldn't open them. Like they were horrible. And I was like, what did I eat? I know everything that I've put in my mouth. Nothing should have created this reaction. And because it's been really coming out in my eyes. And so we have these little puffs, and I had bought Audrey these puffs and they were gluten-free. Well, Amanda bought her some puffs and I was feeding them to her, and we were biting them in half just to make sure she didn't choke on them. And Amanda goes, are you eating the other half of that? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, Mom, they have gluten in them. I was like, oh my gosh. Anyways, so we stopped it before it got too bad. We had a little reaction, but not as bad as we had the night before. And now we know not all puffs are created equal. Not all of them are gluten-free. So anyways, we find a lot of options of dresses. She goes to try them on, and we're like, okay, we can shorten this one. We can do this. We can do this. They're all beautiful. And then she comes out in this one dress, and it's kind of like was 50s inspired. It kind of came across like straight across the front. It tied in the back. So the back was kind of like nothing really in the back, but very appropriate. And then it had like this little flare in the skirt. It had a crinoline in the under it. I don't think it's all crinoline. I think it's crinoline, whatever. And so it just swooshed around a little bit. It was like an A-length dress. And she came out and we were all like, yes. Even the girl in the dressing room was like, I thought the last dress was it. She goes, but I'm wrong. This is the dress for you. And it was so fun. But then, of course, like if every school is different, but in our school, only the people that are on court wear long dresses. Everyone else wears short dresses. Who made this rule? I don't know. But anyways, it's what you do. And so she's like, I think it might be too long and I'd have to shorten it. And, you know, it wasn't long like the other girls on court would be wearing. It was A-length, so a little bit below the knee. And so she's like, I don't know, it's probably too long and stuff. And my girls, I have to give them a shout out because they just were like, Abby, you look beautiful and stand out, be different. You can be different. And because she was just glowing in it. And it just didn't need to be changed. Nothing about it needed to be changed. And even the sales girl, she was like, I totally agree. Be different. Be different than everyone else. And which is such a hard thing for teenagers. I mean, I think it's hard for us as adults, but you apply that to a teenager, that's very hard. And so she decided on the dress. We go to check out and the girl's like, are you going to shorten it or are you going to leave it? And Abby goes, I'm going to leave it. And she goes, yes, that's just going to be so beautiful. And then she was like, how are you going to wear your hair? And what earrings did you pick? And I just sat back and my heart was just so thankful. Thankful for my daughter speaking life, for this sales girl for speaking life, for just that it's so hard to go against the grain, to go against the current, to be different and to be yourself. And I just felt like in that moment as a mom, like if I would have said that, she probably would have looked at me and been like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I don't take offense to that because this is the relationship of a mother and daughter at this phase of life, of teenagehood. And I will never go shopping without my girls. I'm already like trying to figure out where a place to buy a prom dress over in Grand Rapids is because I'm like, we're doing this together because I just need her sisters. She listens to them and they have great advice. They've been there, they've done it. And it was so fun because at Snow Coming, Abby, we kind of do this thing where the girls get dressed up and they do a reveal with their dad. And so she got all ready and then she came out and showed her dad and she just was standing up so straight. She was so confident. And, you know, we also had this discussion for all the moms with the same battle, our grandparents or dads or whoever you are, when we have these conversations with our daughters, you know, I asked her the question, I said, when we're looking at these dresses, and this is a conversation we've been having for a while, every time we buy a dress, we kind of have it. But what do you want people to see? Do you want people to see you, or do you want people to see the dress that they're not so sure is covering things or they don't agree with, or that they don't, it's stealing the show because it's the front runner of the situation. And she was like, I want people to see me. And I'm like, exactly. So you buy a dress that complements you and that when they see you and then they say, oh, what a beautiful dress. So if you're in it, just maybe a little nugget of conversation for you to have with your daughter. Parenting is hard. It's hard to go against where everyone else is going, but compromise is never the answer. And as parents, we often feel like we need to fall into this pattern of compromise. And it's not, don't do it. Don't fall into it. And make it a conversation, and take someone with you who can say something that you can't. All right, I just wanted to share that, but we're going to get into part 2. We left off, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed learning about Samson, and I'm so excited for part 2. And I feel like, I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm just going to get into it. We're just going to dive right into it. So we left Samson, if you remember where we left off, he had lit these foxes' tails on fire. He sets them ablaze, he burns all of the Philistines' crops down. Obviously, they're not happy. He goes and we find him in the next part of our journey of his story. He's in a cave. And basically, the Philistines come to the Israelites, and they're kind of like, we have come to arrest Samson, and they hand him over, which right off the bat, here's something that kind of hit me. So Samson is their deliverer. He's killed so many Philistines. He's saves them. And yet when the Philistines come to them, they just hand him over. They would rather give into their oppressor than support their deliverer. And I'm going to say that for the people in the back. They would rather give into their oppressor than support their deliverer. And I was like, this applies to our life. Because how many times do we give in to Satan, our oppressor? He says something, we listen to it, we believe it, and we don't put our faith in our deliverer, which is Jesus Christ. Probably this week, Satan has whispered something to you, and you've believed it. Why do we lack faith in our deliverer? The one who says, I am for you, who can be against you? I do it too. So I am not pointing any fingers at you, but I just thought right off the bat, as we get into this, we have a nugget. This is a good nugget. Why give in to our oppressor when we have a deliverer? Trust in your deliverer. Okay, we're starting off strong, you guys. So they bind him with ropes, which is interesting because nothing seems to be a problem for Samson. So we know that he kind of submits to this binding. He allows them to do it. And he's taken to the Philistines. Once again, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him. He takes the jawbone of a donkey and he kills 1,000 men. It's just crazy to me. The thought of killing one person just seems so overwhelming to me, especially just holding the jawbone of a donkey. I wouldn't put much faith in that, but here he is killing thousands. I mean, this man is crazy. And another thing that we read after we've seen what we've seen here so far with his story is take his immense ability to warfare and all of these amazing things about Samson. You have to wonder, how much more could have been done if he would have submitted to the Lord instead of his own passions. I mean, even up to this point in Samson's life, if he would have submitted to the Lord, how much more could God have used him than what is happening? It's just a thought. Just a thought, putting it out there. It says, with a jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. I kind of got a kick out of this saying because it said, with the jawbone of an ass, I have piled them into a mass. I'm sorry, but I kind of had to just say it because it's just fun to say. My husband is cracking up right now. He's like, I can't believe you just said that. It was written. I just read what was written. But anyways, this place where this happens is called Ramoth Lee. Did not say that right, but interpretation, Jawbone Hill, which makes sense since he killed them all with a jawbone. Now, Samson is thirsty. Okay, he's just done this mighty act. And at the end of the day, Samson, even with the Spirit of the Lord upon him, he's human. He's thirsty. He's also a whiner. I read something that said he's basically like a big child, because if you hear what he says, this is what he says. You have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. And now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised. What a man. What a whiner. I'm sorry, but he's just like, I've killed all these people and now you're going to let me die of thirst. God does not, of course. He splits the hollow place that is Lee, and water comes out, and he drinks, and his spirit is returned, and he was revived. The Lord bailing him out once again. Now, Spurgeon, who I've made reference to him actually in many different podcasts, great preacher, great writer. He did a sermon actually on this point of Samson killing heaps of men, because he said just as soon as he had this victory, he has this big conquest, right away he has another thing he has to face. And that applies so much to our lives. We have victories, and I feel like sometimes we feel like we should get a rest because okay, here's the thing. We didn't even get the victory. It wasn't us. It was the Lord. But we act like we need a rest. Like, wait a second, don't bring the next trial because I'm just not ready for that yet. But that's part of life. We will have a victory. The Lord will have a victory. And then bam, we got another thing we have to face. You ever feel like things are just piling on, like one thing after another? It seems like no matter which way you turn, something is happening. And here's the thing, if that is overwhelming us, then I think we maybe need to take a stop. And this is just hitting me right now. We need to stop and look around and say, whose strength is all this going to be accomplished in? Because right now it feels overwhelming to me, but it's not overwhelming to God. So if it's overwhelming, maybe we need to take a step back and say, I'm trying to do this in my own strength. And I need to, don't be Samson doing it in his own strength. Do it with the Lord. Samson relied on himself. If you realize, like, this is really the first mention of his thirst where he kind of even acknowledges God. God is not a big part of Samson's life. It's when he needs something. Then do you notice that okay, this is just coming together for me right now. You notice that when this says that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, he did not ask for the Spirit of the Lord to come upon him. The Spirit of the Lord just came upon him. He didn't even ask for help. The Lord just came upon him. But in a moment of his thirst, in his weakness, then he's like, God save me. Do we just use God for when we can't do things in our own strength? Or are we calling on him all the time? Or are we like, God, just take a little seat. Just I got this one. You just can take a rest. And then we fight a victory. We fight a battle. We think we got the victory, and then something else hits us in the face right away. And then we're like, oh, wait a second, I need God. Shame on us. Oh, we're so human, you guys. We are so human. Man. So once again, Samson is led again by his eyes with lust. And he goes to Gaza and he sees a harlot and he goes in and he's with her. We know this is sin. And it says, when the Gazarites are told, they surrounded the place and they lay in wait for him all night at the gates of the city. And they said in the morning, they said, when it is morning, when it is daylight, then we will kill him. But Samson leaves at midnight. He gets to it's just crazy to me. He gets to the doors of the city, which is, I don't know what it looked like. I wasn't there, but I'm imagining that the doors to a city, quite large, quite heavy, not something that one man, I mean, if it could, then their city would be very susceptible to the enemy. So it's going to be something where it would take force, blunt force, tons of people to open them. But this is what Samson does. He walks up to the gates. He takes the doors off and the posts of the door, the whole kit and caboodle. He hoists it up on his back. He goes up a hill, which I don't know if you've ever gone up a hill, but just going up a hill is a lot, let alone with however much that weighed. And he puts them down and he places them towards Hebron. Once again, we see God bail this guy out. And once again, we see that God can use people despite their sin. Crazy. Now, if we're not done with women, we are not done. Because then he falls in love. Now, the other one, he's like, she's pretty. Let's do a little bang bang. This is more like he falls in love. He is smitten with a woman of the Valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. You guys are like, now we're getting to Delilah. We're getting to her. What's interesting about this is that this decision, because all right, if you know anything about your Bible, you know the end. You know this story. But let's just back up for a second because we can miss something right here. Our decisions can lead to life, or our decisions can lead to ruin. They will lead to one of two things. I think sometimes we just make decisions without thinking of the consequences or the blessing of what could happen. And he makes a decision here. He makes a decision against who God consecrated him to be, a Nazirite. He's not to be with foreign women. All of these things, he goes against everything. He makes a conscious decision. It's not like, oh, I didn't know what was going to happen. I think that's like such an excuse. Well, I didn't know that was going to happen. Here's the thing. If it's sin, it's going to be bad. Plain and simple. It's going to be bad. But just like, I mean, especially I feel like with sexual sin, people don't think of the consequences. They don't. They just think with other parts of their body. Just gonna put it out there. And they go with it. That's what they do. And that is what we have at this point. And I just realized maybe I'm not recording. And so you know what? We're just going to do something fun and make sure I'm recording. So you're going to see me get up and you're going to see me sit down, but at least I'm not wearing pajama pants. So you're not going to know. This is going to be fun. Okay, ready? Just close your eyes so you don't see anything. We are recording. Okay, I just had like this pit in my stomach. I was like, are you recording? Did you push record? I don't know if I did. Like 1,000 thoughts just what happened in that split second. But it makes this podcast fun. Who puts a podcast where someone gets up and checks something? Nobody. We're just being real life here. All right, back to decisions that lead to life or lead to death. Right here, we know he makes one that leads to death. So the lords of the Philistines, so the highfalutin guys, come to her and they say, entice him and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him. And every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. Here's the thing. I think Delilah had love in her heart. She just loved money more than she did Samson. Because money is the root of all evil. Every conversation that I've been having lately, we were talking about some horses, okay? We watched this horse documentary. And you know what it comes down to? Money. Nothing about horses. Money. Everything. Money. What does it come down to? Money. Why did they do that? Money. The love of money. Because people have money, but you can never have enough money. You will do whatever you need to do to get money. No different with Miss Delilah here. And I actually looked it up to see what 1,100 pieces of silver is. Today, that'd be like $65,000. So, I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of money for her. I don't know what she did for a living. It doesn't really say, but I'm sure it was, we know that she loved money because she did it. Otherwise, if she really loved Samson, she wouldn't have done what she's about to do. So Delilah says to Samson, "Please tell me where your great strength lies." Now, remember when we opened up this podcast in our first episode, and we talked about how kind of debunking the fact that we've often thought of Samson as this hunk of muscle and, flowing hair and all this stuff. And why would they need to know? Right here, I think it debunks it, because if he was strong, they'd be like, we know. I mean, it's surprising. They can't figure out why he's so strong. So just throw that little tidbit in there. And she goes on, "And with what you may be bound with to afflict you." She's not even like holding back anything. She's like, so what would it take to, you couldn't break out of it and, you could be tortured. Like, who says that? She must have had a really syrupy, sweet voice. I don't know what she sounded like, but she must have been really gorgeous. I mean, with some good assets, if you know what I mean. Anyways, sorry. My husband's probably like, too far, but no one's here to say it to me. I can say it to myself, I guess. So, and we know this, that when the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson, he's invincible. He doesn't have to have bulging muscles. He doesn't need them because he has the Spirit of the Lord. He doesn't need anything, honestly. He just needs the Spirit of the Lord to come upon him. But here's a little thing to think about. More than his hair is his weakness. It's like she's looking for, what's your Achilles heel? What's the one thing that can get you? Obviously, he knows it's his hair. But I read something that said, the truth is, he can be bound with attention and affection of ungodly yet attractive women. That was his Achilles heel. Women. Relationships. That was his problem. And you know what's interesting is I see that all the time. Men and women. Their Achilles heels is a relationship. It's that they don't want to be lonely, and so they settle. I see it all the time. It's passionate, pursuing, God-fearing people that are like growing in their faith, like rock stars for Christ, doing amazing things. And then the opposite sex comes along. They're attracted with their eyes, and all of the things that they have held fast to and held true to go out the window the moment that they see that person or build a relationship with them. It's all the time. No different with Samson. Nothing has changed since Samson's time. So Samson tells her he can be bound with 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, and then he will become weak like any other man. So the Philistines brought them to her, and she bound him. Let's just say, this week I had a conversation with someone about red flags in a relationship. And I'm just befuddled that when there are these, not even like little red flags, but like giant red flags waving, which is the case here with Samson, with Delilah, that people are still like, but I love him. I love her. I just want to be with them. I don't care that this red flag is waving right in front of my face. I don't see anything but love. What? How stupid. Okay, I'm just going to say it. Maybe because I've been talking to someone about this and I just feel like, how blind are you? How blind are you to not see these things? She's a liar and she's untrustworthy. Two very foundational things in which you need in a relationship. If I found out my husband lied to me when we were dating, oh my gosh, gone. Or that he wasn't trustworthy, gone. They're not married, okay? Like, we're going to save the married part. But dating relationships, when I see one person cheat on another and people stay in a relationship, I'm like, and then they get married and then it happens again. And they're like, I don't know why. You guys are probably like, wow, Erin, tell us how you really feel. You know what? I'm tired of people compromising. I really am. We all compromise. Everybody does. I do. We all do. But when are we going to wake up and say no? Like, the Lord has set us apart. And yet, Paul and I just talked about this today. Yet we're trying to fit into a ungodly, not fearing the Lord society. We're trying to fit ourselves into them because we don't want to be different when the Bible says you will be different. You're called to be different. And yet we're just succumbing to everything that the world does, especially with dating relationships. Oh, I could go down a deep rabbit trail with you all on this one. I so could, but I'm not going to because I think I've gone far enough. But red flags all over the place. And let me tell you something. If you see, you're like, you're keep going to go. I'm going to say this one last thing. A good friend, a godly friend, when you see your friend compromising, will speak up and say, listen, I love you enough to tell you there's red flags and you need to pay attention to these. And this is the thing. You tell them and then you have to let it lie. You can't make decisions for other people. But as a believer and a God-fearing person, we should not allow our brother and sister to run off a cliff without saying, wait a second, can I just pause for a second? Can you just listen to me for a moment? What they choose to do with it from there is on them. But don't be afraid to speak out. I hear that all the time. Well, they didn't ask me. Okay. And people say that about their kids all the time. My kids didn't ask my opinion. Well, when I see that something is going to hurt my child, I'm going to say something. And you know what? It's their responsibility to do with it as well. They can choose to listen or they can choose not to. I often say, why don't you take that and you pray about it? But if I see that my kid's going to slam into a brick wall, you better believe I'm not going to wait for them to ask me. So parents, stop that excuse, they didn't ask me. If you love your child, what does the Bible say? He chastens those that he loves. So if your God chastens you and you didn't ask for it, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that as my model because I love you, because I care about you, and I don't want you to see you have a terrible relationship and end up in divorce and all of these other things. And yes, I've gone down a big hole here. But we got to talk about it because it's here. It's right in front of us. So obviously, the Philistines are upon him. He breaks them it says he broke them like a strand of yarn that touches the fire, which if you've ever seen that, it breaks like this. She isn't happy because she's been made a fool. I mean, I don't know if I were her, I'd be freaking out like, oh my gosh, now he knows I want to get him. But she's not afraid, apparently. Like I said, she must be stunning. So she asks him again. Now, obviously, one would think he would wake up and see that she doesn't have good intentions for him, but she's attracted to him. Oh, we're going to say this too, because I wrote this down. We have a hard time understanding why people don't leave relationships that aren't good for them. I can probably tell you when I have sat down with people and had this conversation, which has been many, that one of the questions that I will ask is, are you having sex with them? And the answer is yes, every time. And that is called a soul tie. When we engage in sexual activity with another person before we are married, our souls are tying together. Look it up. It's a thing that happens. So when that person isn't good for us and when we need to leave that relationship, the reason why people can't leave is because their soul has been tied to another person. That's what it is. It's frustrating. But every time that I've asked, yes, we're engaging in sexual activity. Now they're tied together. That is a much harder bond to break than when you have not been in that place. See, when God says don't have sex before marriage, he has a reason for it, for many, many reasons, but here's one of the reasons. He doesn't want you tying your soul to somebody that is not the right person for you, and anybody who is telling you to do those things and pressuring you to do that's a red flag right off the bat. It's a red flag. Get out of there. Okay, we're going to wrap that up. My last podcast when I went on dating or whatever, talking about dating unequally yoked, our youth pastor, Janice, was like, preach. Because I was like, I kind of got preaching. One lady was like, yeah. And then my youth pastor, she's like, preach it. Because it's her message too. Because we've just seen it. And you know, this podcast is real. And we're going to dive into things. We're not skimming the surface. And we're going to be real. And we're going to be honest. And that's just what's going to happen. Okay, so he says, if you bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then that's what's going to work. So she takes new ropes and she binds him. Is anyone frustrated with this relationship? Obviously, we know the writing is on the wall. It's amazing to me, these red flags, and he refuses to run away from his sin, and he compromises, which puts him in bondage, which that's what happens. And obviously, like, you know what happens. He breaks them off like they were thread. Like, it's no big deal for him. And as if twice wasn't enough, let's do it a third time. So she asks again. And he tells her to weave the 7 locks of his head into a web of a loom. Same old, yada, yada, yada. The Philistines are upon you. He pulls his hair out, no problem. Then she says the word that I just love in relationships, because we just don't know what this word means. And neither does Delilah, let me tell you. She says, how can you say you love me when your heart is not with me? Everyone heard that line before? If you love me, you'll do this. If you love me, you'll compromise. It's nothing new. Nothing new under the sun, folks. Delilah says the same thing. And here's where she's wrong. I believe he did love her. Why else would he be here? He trusted her and she didn't deserve it. Her heart just wasn't with him. So she accuses him because she's not getting what she wants. Don't let anybody say that line to you. And if anyone is saying that line to someone you love, call it out, friends. It's such a lie. Now she goes on to pester him daily, so much that it says his soul was vexed to death. He's a little dramatic, right? But we all know that a pestering woman the Bible talks about it, and it's not good. And so he told her all of his heart. He caves. And this is where Samson did have a decision to make. Faithfulness to God or faithfulness to an ungodly relationship. And someone right now is listening and you have faithfulness to an ungodly relationship over a faithfulness to God. You've chosen your relationship over your relationship with God. And you think that you can have both. And we'll get to that in a hot second. But you can't. You can't have both. It doesn't exist in the same space. If you think about it, the strongest man in the world, he is so weak to the power of a relationship, to a woman. He can do anything, but he can't resist her. He tells her, "No razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." So she calls for the Philistines because she now knows he has shared his heart. And she lulls him to sleep on her knees and has a barber come shave off his locks. I love what Spurgeon wrote about this piece. He said, "The devil is a skillful barber. He can shave the believer's locks while he scarcely knows it." The devil can steal things from you and he can take things from you while you don't even know it. You don't even see it. And that, my friends, is scary to me. That there are things that the enemy can take from me and I don't even see it. Lord, help us not to be lulled asleep. He was lulled to sleep. I think that's where our nation is right now. We've been lulled to sleep in so many areas. Let's wake up. Let's wake up. And then she began to torment him with his strength, and his strength left him. See, Samson's hair wasn't magical, but Samson broke the vow. He had been breaking it for a while, right? Like, this wasn't just like suddenly it broke, but this was the last straw. Now he has to come face to face with his rejection of God up to this point. And his hair was a sign of his consecration to the Lord, but that is no longer. He's no longer consecrated before the Lord. And it says she wakes him up and says, "The Philistines are upon you." And he thinks that he can shake himself free as he did before, for he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. And that hit me hard. He had lived so long in the compromise that he didn't even notice when the Lord no longer was with him. What compromise are we living in? That the Lord says, my spirit will not be with you in that compromise. I wept. I wept at that. What compromise? See, compromise isn't something that happens like bam. It's something that, you look at Samson's life. It was one thing after another. One thing led to another. It was one compromise after one compromise. that led to a deeper compromise, that led to him giving the source of his strength, his consecration to the Lord. What are you living in? What are you allowing? What am I allowing? Yeah. He's such a tragic example of wasted potential. And I really thought doing this podcast that it would be like this happy ending. And some of you are like, there's still hope. Yeah, there is. But I think we have to sit in this space. It's important. Because he rejected God's warnings. He thought he could get away. He thought he could escape the consequences of his sin. And that's what Satan lies to us and says, you can get away with this. And sometimes when God doesn't act immediately, which is in Samson's case, right? God doesn't act immediately. He continues to pour his spirit upon him, and he comes upon him so many times. But there is a point where God's mercy on him is replaced with God's judgment and correction. Sometimes it's interesting with God because sometimes he acts immediately and sometimes he waits. I don't know his thinking, so I can't explain that to you, but Samson's strength was from the Lord, but then he departed. It says, then the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza, and they bound him with the bronze fetters, and he became a grinder in the prison. However, the hair on his head began to grow again after being shaven. It's interesting that he was blinded because his eyes were the thing that led him to disobey God. And his sin left him blind. And he was now in bondage and he is a slave. But his hair begins to grow. Hope. There is hope. I never want to leave you in a place where there's not hope. But I think this story is a little bit different. This passage of scripture is a little bit different because I've always been preached. It's been preached to me all of the hope part, but I've never sat in the consequences. We like the hope part. We don't like to sit in the depth of situations. But that's the reality of life. There are depths. There are consequences. And I think that this is what the Lord is providing us in this podcast, is to take a look at that. Sit in that. It says, now the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god. And they said, our God has delivered us into our hands, Samson, our enemy. And when the people saw this, they praised their God. Our God has derived into our hands our enemy, the destroyer of our land, and the one who multiplied our deaths. So it happened that their hearts were merry, and they called for Samson that he may perform for them. And they stationed him between the pillars. Do you realize that Samson's disobedience was used to glorify a false god? They thought their God was stronger than the God of Israel because they had conquered Samson. See, our disobedience, we've talked about this. It is so much more than us. But it also affects our God. His name. Oh, so much to take in. And Samson said to the lad who had led him by the hand, let me feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean on them. And now the temple was filled with men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, about 3,000 men and women. And the Samson called to the Lord. O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once. O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. So Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars which supported the temple, and he braced himself against them, and he said, let me die with the Philistines. And he pushed with all his might, and the temple fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his life. And his brothers and his father's household came and took him and buried him. God did answer that last prayer. And he achieved his greatest victory in that moment. But it cost him his life. There was a cost. I read something that said that Samson's life was a picture of the believer in disobedience. Samson believed in God, but he walked in complete disobedience. God used him, but Samson didn't get to benefit from God. Do we see that missed purpose, missed potential? Because God used him. If he had walked in it, how amazing could his whole story would have been? Instead, it ends with tragedy, and it's shadowed by the waste of great potential. Now, Samson is mentioned in the Heroes of Faith in Hebrews 11:32, but he was described as a tragic hero. God gave Samson his strength, even though he forsook God. What is amazing to me, God did not forsake Samson, because we see at the end, God still comes through for him. He puts his spirit upon him and answers his prayer. And if you notice, we never see, besides his whining prayer of the water, we never see him have this kind of prayer with the Lord. It's so sad that it had to wait till the end of his life. I read something that said, Samson was a great conqueror who never allowed God to conquer him. He should have been one of the greatest men of the Old Testament. That's really what he should have been, but it was wasted potential. And what I want to wrap up with it here, and you're like, this is so depressing, Erin. Here's the thing. There are so many stories and accounts in Scripture of heroes of faith that we read, and we are to imitate that. We are to strive for those things. But I think Samson's story, it is a story not to imitate, but it's an imitation of instruction. It instructs us to be different, to walk differently. It's as if it is a manual of the don'ts. This is what will happen if you don't. This is how long the Lord will be with you, and there will be a moment where he won't be with you when you walk in disobedience. It reminds me of this scripture, and I'll leave you with this. It's one to instruct us not to lean on our own strength and our own understanding, but to, in all of our ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct our path. Thank you for being on this journey with me with Samson. It hit me hard. It's given me a lot of food for thought, and I hope it does for you as well. Love you guys.